For 5 years, I thought Ethan Vale hated me in the way romance heroes were supposed to hate the woman they secretly wanted. That was the first embarrassing thing. The second embarrassing thing was that I had built an entire life on that misunderstanding. The third was that I did not realize any of it until glowing comments began floating over his head during a Monday budget meeting, while the entire executive floor of Vale Group sat 10 feet away pretending not to notice that their cold, untouchable chief executive looked like he wanted to crawl out of his own skin. Ethan sat behind the black glass desk in his white custom suit, jaw tight, cheeks faintly red, eyes sharp enough to cut paper. He was beautiful in the expensive, unbearable way only fictional men were allowed to be. Broad shoulders, long fingers, a face like winter sunlight on marble. The kind of man who made people lower their voices when he entered a room. Unfortunately for both of us, I had never been good at lowering mine. I stood beside the conference table, passing out budget binders as if nothing were wrong. The senior vice presidents opened the files, murmuring about next year's expansion plan. Ethan's hand tightened around his pen. He glanced at me. It was a warning look. Cold, proud, furious. Usually, that look would have delighted me. Usually, I would have leaned closer just to watch his restraint crack. But then the comments appeared. They streamed across the air above him in bright translucent lines. The villainess is disgusting. She saved his life once and used that debt to control him for 5 years. Just wait until the heroine comes back from Europe. Ethan will finally learn the truth. When he finds out Ava was never his real savior, he will destroy her. She dies in the abandoned warehouse. Classic villainous ending. I blinked. The binder in my hand slipped. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Ava Morgan. Are you going to stand there forever? His voice dragged me back into the room. Deep. Controlled. Irritated. Familiar. I stared at the glowing words. Hero. Villainess. Warehouse. Destroy. No. Absolutely not. I had retired. I had died enough times for other people's stories. Before this life, I had been a system worker. That sounds grander than it was. In practice, it meant I spent 5 years being shoved into different romance novels as the designated wicked woman. If the script needed someone to pour wine on the heroine, I was handed a glass. If the script needed someone to frame the heroine for theft, I got the fake necklace. If the script needed a jealous woman to lose everything so the pure couple could shine brighter. Hello, my name was Ava, apparently available for emotional demolition. I had been burned, poisoned, pushed into traffic, framed for crimes, slapped by heroes, stabbed by villains, and once, memorably, flattened by a falling chandelier because the plot decided subtlety was overrated. When the system finally told me I had earned retirement, I asked for a simple life. I did not ask for billions. I did not ask for fame. I asked for a home. And, because I was still foolish from too many tragic scripts, I asked for one beautiful man who would love me completely. The system had said, request accepted. Then I woke up in a rainy alley beside an elderly woman with a cane, being chased by debt collectors who thought an orphan with no family would make an easy target. The old woman saved me. She swung that cane like a baseball bat and knocked a grown man directly into a pile of trash bags. She was Margaret Vale, Ethan's grandmother. She told me I had once saved her grandson's life years earlier, though I had no memory of it. She brought me back to the Vale family, called me her little granddaughter, and gave me the first real bedroom I had ever owned. Of course I thought Ethan was the beautiful man the system had promised. Who else could he be? He was cold to me. He rejected me. He told me not to follow him. He said he did not like being touched. He said he owed me money and protection, not affection. And I, with the brain damage of a woman who had spent 5 years performing villainous roles, thought, how shy. How dramatic. This must be the slow burn part. I mistook every boundary for flirting. I mistook every refusal for a challenge. I mistook his anger for restraint and his restraint for desire. Worst of all, because the Vale family believed I was Ethan's savior, I had leverage. I used it. I moved into his house. I became his executive assistant. I inserted myself into his schedule, his meetings, his meals, his life. I told myself it was romance. I told myself the system had promised me happiness. I told myself that if I could survive being killed for other people's love stories, then surely I had earned a love story of my own. That did not make it right. The comments made that clear in the cruelest way possible. The heroine is Natalie Shaw. She was the little girl who actually saved him. Ava took the credit. Ethan only tolerated Ava because Grandma Margaret loved her and because he thought he owed her his life. The moment the truth comes out, Ava is finished. My stomach turned cold. Ethan was still watching me. Ava, he said again, lower this time. Focus. I focused so hard I nearly stopped breathing. If the comments were right, I had not been living a romance. I had been living the origin story of my own execution. I finished passing out the binders with hands that no longer felt attached to me. The meeting ended. Executives left. The glass doors closed. Only Ethan and I remained in his office, along with the comments still flashing over his desk like a jury made of internet strangers. What is wrong with you today? Ethan asked. Under ordinary circumstances, I would have smiled, stepped close, and watched his elegant composure fracture. This time, I backed away. Ethan stopped mid-step. Something flickered in his eyes. Anger first. Then confusion. Then, so fast I might have imagined it, worry. What was that? He asked. Nothing. You never move away from me. The sentence hit harder than it should have. Not because it was romantic. Because it was true. I swallowed. Maybe I should have started earlier. His face cooled at once. What game are you playing? No game. You expect me to believe that? The comments rolled above him. She is pretending to be pitiful now. Wait until Natalie arrives. Ethan will fall in love at first sight. Ava better run. That last comment was the first intelligent thing any of them had said. Run. Yes, I could do that. I had survived too many scripts by staying in character. This time, I would survive by leaving the stage. I looked at Ethan. Really looked at him. At the tired lines beneath his eyes. At the way his fingers pressed into the desk as if he were holding himself back from saying something. At the man I had claimed to love while refusing to hear him. You do not have to worry, I said. From now on, I will not touch you. I will not follow you. I will not force myself into your private life. The room went very still. Ethan stared at me as if I had spoken in a dead language. Then he laughed once, cold and ugly. Do not touch me, then. You say it like I begged for your attention. I know you did not. His laugh died. Good, he said through his teeth. The farther you stay from me, the better. The comments cheered. Finally. The villainess is leaving. Why does Ethan look upset? I did not answer them. I simply turned, walked out of his office, and began preparing my escape. The first rule of surviving a romance novel was simple. Never wait for the dramatic reveal. By lunch, I had called my broker. By 3, I had liquidated investments Ethan did not know about. By evening, I had moved enough money into an offshore account to start over somewhere very far from Vale Group, Vale Mansion, and the man whose life I had mistaken for my reward. That night, Ethan called. I was sitting in the back of a town car, smoking an unlit cigarette because I liked the shape of bad habits more than the actual taste. My suitcase was beside me. My passport was in my coat pocket. The airport was 40 minutes away. I answered because I was weak. Come home for dinner, Ethan said. Not please. Not where are you? Just a command, wrapped in that cold voice of his. I have plans. Silence. His breathing changed. Grandma is coming, he said at last. She asked for you. That was unfair. Margaret Vale was the only person in this world who had loved me without asking whether I deserved it first. I closed my eyes. I will come back for dinner. You sound disappointed. I am tired. Because of that scholarship boy who called yesterday. I frowned. Noah. Noah Carter was one of the students I sponsored through college. He had called to tell me he had been accepted to Columbia. I had congratulated him and declined his request to meet for dinner, mainly because Ethan had overheard his young male voice through the phone and spent the rest of the evening radiating silent hostility like a furnace with a grudge. Ethan's voice went colder. You call him by his first name. I call most people by their first names. You never call me Ethan when you are angry. That was oddly specific. I am not angry. Then what are you? Terrified, I thought. Ashamed. Finally awake. Instead I said, hungry. I will see Grandma soon. I hung up before he could answer. At Vale Mansion, Margaret was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. She was small, silver-haired, and wrapped in a cream cardigan, but the cane in her hand still looked ready for violence. The moment she saw me, her face softened. Ava, sweetheart. You are too thin. That almost undid me. I went to her and let her pat my cheek. The comments did not appear around Margaret. Good. I did not want strangers judging the only warm thing in my life. Dinner was strange. Ethan had changed into a pale suit he knew I liked. He claimed his other clothes had been sent to the cleaners, which was absurd because the man owned more suits than some boutiques. He wore the cedar and citrus cologne I had once said made him seem less like a corporate eye sculpture and more like a dangerous mistake. He caught me looking and immediately looked away. Do not flatter yourself, he said. I dressed for the board dinner. There was no board dinner. Margaret looked between us with the expression of someone watching two cats pretend not to share a sunbeam. I kept my hands folded in my lap. I did not lean into Ethan's space. I did not tease him. I did not take food from his plate the way I used to. Halfway through dinner, his fork hit the plate too hard. Are you ill? He asked. No. Then why are you acting like this? Margaret's eyes sharpened. Like what? Ethan shut his mouth.
I smilte her.
I'm trying to behave. Margaret hummed. You behaving sounds ominous. She was not wrong. After dinner, I helped her to the sitting room. She held my wrist longer than necessary. Did Ethan upset you? I wanted to say no. Instead I asked, Grandma, if I were not the person who saved Ethan, would you still have brought me home? Her face changed. Not confusion. Pain. Who put that thought in your head? No one. Ava. Her voice had the weight of a woman who had buried too much to tolerate lies. I looked down. I just wondered. Margaret sighed and pulled me to sit beside her. The first time I saw you, you were bleeding in an alley and still trying to stand between me and those men. Maybe you saved Ethan before. Maybe you did not. But that night, you saved me. And before that, I had already heard your name from my grandson for years. My head snapped up. From Ethan. He never said much, she said. He was a child when it happened. The kidnapping, the locked closet, the dark. He remembered a girl singing outside the door so he would not be afraid. He remembered a hand pushing food through the crack. He remembered a bracelet with a tiny silver star. He remembered losing her. My chest tightened. A bracelet. Margaret nodded. He kept a broken one for years. When I found you with a matching charm, I thought. She stopped. Something cold slid down my spine. In my jewelry box upstairs, there was a silver star charm I had owned since waking in this body. I had never known where it came from. I had assumed it was a random prop the system forgot to explain. But the comments said Natalie was his real savior. The comments said I stole the credit. The comments said I would die. I no longer knew who to trust. Before I could ask more, Ethan appeared in the doorway. His gaze dropped to my hand in Margaret's. His expression tightened. Grandma, your nurse is waiting. I know how time works, Margaret said. He ignored that and looked at me. We need to talk. No. Talking was how plots tightened. Tomorrow, I said. Now. I said tomorrow. For once, I did not soften my refusal. Ethan stood perfectly still. Then he said, very quietly, fine. It did not sound fine. That night, I booked the earliest flight to Vancouver. Not because Canada was magic, but because it was available, and available was better than dead. The next morning, I left before sunrise. I did not say goodbye to Ethan. I left Margaret a letter with half the truth, that I had made mistakes, that I needed distance, that I loved her, and that I would call when I landed. Then I got into another car and watched Vale Mansion disappear behind iron gates. Ethan called 11 times before we reached the airport. I blocked him on the 12th. The comments appeared again, floating over the grey highway. Great. The villainess finally knows her place. Now Ethan can be happy with Natalie. Wait. Why is he calling so much? At the terminal drop-off, my driver stepped out first. He was new, young, friendly. I had hired him through an app because my usual security team reported to Ethan, and I was not that stupid. Apparently, I was still stupid enough. As I reached for my suitcase, the driver grabbed my wrist. Something sweet and chemical pressed over my mouth. I kicked once. Hard. He cursed. The world tilted. The last thing I heard before everything went dark was his voice on the phone. I have Ava Morgan. When I woke, my wrists were tied to the arms of a metal chair. The air smelled like dust, old rain, and rust. An abandoned warehouse. Of course. The comments had been right about the location, which was deeply annoying. But when the door opened, the person who walked in was not Ethan. It was a young woman in a white dress and a camel coat, with soft brown hair, bright eyes, and the kind of face that made people lower their guard because they assumed cruelty would look less pretty. Natalie Shaw. The heroine. She looked at me for a long time. Then she smiled. Sister, she said softly. I finally found you. Every piece of my brain stopped working. Do not call me that. But you are. She came closer and knelt in front of me. You do not remember me. I remember being drugged by your driver. Technically, he was my driver. That makes it better. No, she admitted. But I panicked. That was not a sentence heroines usually said. The comments stuttered above her head. Heroine. Wait, why does she know Ava? This is not the hospital scene. Natalie reached into her coat and pulled out a small black device, cracked down the middle. It pulsed with blue light. My blood went cold. Where did you get that? From the system I killed. I stared. She said it like she had stolen a parking spot. Natalie tilted her head. You really do not remember the alley, do you? 10 years ago. You saved a girl from being sold by her father. You threw dog waste into a man's mouth and got stabbed for it. Memory hit me so hard my wrists strained against the rope. My first life. Before the system. Before the novels. Before the villainous roles. I had been 15, angry, hungry, and absolutely not equipped for heroism. I had seen an old man dragging a little girl into an alley. I had kicked a trash can, grabbed the nearest disgusting thing available, and fought like a lunatic until the girl escaped. Then there had been a knife. Pain. Blood. The sky above Queens turning white. You were that girl, I whispered. Natalie's smile broke. I ran home, she said. And found out my father had sold me twice. The alley was only the beginning. I died later. Badly. I had no answer. She wiped at her cheek with the back of her hand, irritated by her own tears. Then a system found me. It wanted to use me as a heroine. I said yes because it promised I could find you if I played enough stories. Then I learned systems lie. So you killed it. Eventually. That is not usually allowed. Neither is making girls die for narrative tension, she said. I liked her immediately and wished she had not kidnapped me. Natalie untied my hands. I came back from Europe today because the heroine role could not enter the plot earlier, she said. I wanted to run straight to you. But the system's remaining plot hooks were active. If Ethan did not perform the hospital scene with me, the story would autocorrect around you. Autocorrect how? She glanced at the warehouse walls. I understood. Death. So you made Ethan carry you. I told him enough to scare him, she said. Not everything. He is very easy to scare when your name is involved. The comments exploded. What? Ethan knew. The heroine is sabotaging her own romance. Natalie made a face at the comments. These things are so judgmental. You can see them too. Of course. They are system residue. Basically plot gossip with a superiority complex. That was the most accurate description I had ever heard. She stood and paced the warehouse. Ethan is not my destiny. I do not want him. He cried in the hospital stairwell for 20 minutes because he thought you had left with another man. Ethan does not cry. Natalie gave me a look. Sister, that man cries like a tea kettle. I thought of Ethan's cold face. His white suits. His rigid posture. His endless declarations that he wanted me far away. Then I thought of Margaret's story, a child in a dark closet, waiting for a girl who never came back. He hates me, I said. He is terrified of you leaving, Natalie corrected. Which is not the same thing. To be clear, he also had reasons to be furious. You were not exactly healthy for him. I know. The admission scraped my throat. Natalie softened. Good. Then you can choose differently. What do you want from me? Come with me, she said. I have system access now. There are other stories. Other girls trapped in roles. We can save them. You and me. For one wild second, I wanted to say yes. No Ethan. No Vale Mansion. No guilt. No comments deciding whether I deserved punishment. Just a door out of the script and a girl from my first life offering me a new mission. Then I remembered Margaret's warm hand. I remembered Ethan standing in the doorway when I said tomorrow, looking like tomorrow might not come. I remembered that running away could save me, but it could also become another way to let the system decide my ending. I cannot go, I said. Natalie's face fell. Because of him. Because of me, I said. I spent 5 years hurting people because scripts told me who I was. Then I spent 5 more hurting Ethan because I thought love was something owed to me. If I leave without facing that, I will just carry the same damage into another world. She looked down. He does not deserve you. Maybe not. Maybe I do not deserve him either. But deserving is not the question anymore. Then what is? Whether we can stop being what the plot made us. Natalie was quiet for a long time. Then she untied my ankles. Fine, she said. But if he makes you cry, I am deleting him from the genre. Can you do that? Not yet. That was not comforting. The warehouse door burst open before I could answer. Ethan stood there with 4 security guards behind him, rain darkening his hair, eyes red, breath uneven. For once, nothing about him looked cold. He looked wrecked. Ava, he said. Only my name. Not a command. Not an accusation. Just proof that he had found me. Natalie stepped between us. If you yell at her, I will hit you with a chair. Ethan did not even look at her. His eyes were fixed on my untied wrists, the red marks in my skin. Who did that? Not her, I said quickly. Her driver. It is complicated. Everything about you is complicated. That is fair. He crossed the room in 3 strides and stopped an arm's length away, as if he had slammed into an invisible wall. Before, I would have closed that distance for him. This time, I waited. His hands shook. I thought you were dead, he said. I'm not. I thought the warehouse. Natalie said. His voice broke. He swallowed and tried again. I thought I was too late. The comments went silent. That was when I understood that the plot had not simply lied. It had flattened everyone into roles. Ethan the cold hero. Natalie the sweet heroine. Ava the shameless villainess. It had no room for trauma, confusion, guilt, debt, fear, or the ugly ways people begged for love when they did not know how to ask. I touched the bruise on my wrist. Ethan, I am sorry. He froze. I should have said that years ago, I continued. You told me no. You told me to stay away. You told me affection was not repayment. I did not listen. I used the debt your family thought you owed me. I used Grandma's love. I treated your boundaries like a game because I thought this world was finally giving me what I earned. His face had gone pale. Ava. Let me finish, I said. He closed his mouth. I did save people in other worlds. I did suffer. I did want a home. But none of that gave me the right to turn you into my reward. Rain tapped against the broken warehouse windows. Natalie looked away. Ethan's jaw worked once. I hated you, he said. The words landed cleanly. I nodded. I know. I hated that I could not hate only you. I hated that when you were cruel, you were also the only person who stayed. I hated that Grandma loved you. I hated that I waited for you outside meetings even after swearing I wanted you gone. I hated that when you stopped reaching for me, I felt like that closet door had closed again. His eyes filled. That is not your fault, he said harshly, as if arguing with himself. My fear is not your responsibility. But it was real. I did not know how to answer without making it smaller, so I did not. He took something from his coat pocket. A broken silver star bracelet. My breath caught. Grandma told me, he said. About the charm. About the alley. About what she thought. Natalie told me the rest. Natalie raised a hand. To clarify, I told him after scaring him half to death. You said Ava would die if I did not follow the plot, Ethan said. And you believed me. Because it was Ava. His voice was so simple that my chest hurt. Ethan held out the bracelet. I kept this because the girl who saved me sang through a door until her voice disappeared. I thought she abandoned me. Then I thought she came back as you. Then I was told she was Natalie. Then Natalie told me she was never that girl either. I stared at the silver star. Who was? Ethan looked at me. The comments flickered. Plot record corrupted. Original savior identity unstable. Reader vote branch detected. Natalie groaned. Oh, perfect. The system does not even know anymore. I started laughing. Not because it was funny. Because if I did not laugh, I might scream. All of this. 5 years of guilt, debt, obsession, fear. A love story twisted into a punishment machine. And the central truth was not even stable. The system had used all of us. It had moved the label of savior like a prize token, attaching it wherever the plot needed leverage. Ethan watched me laugh with increasing alarm. Ava. It does not matter, I said. He looked wounded. I stepped closer, stopping just before touching him. It matters that you were a child and you were afraid. It matters that someone helped you. It matters that Natalie survived. It matters that Margaret loved me. But I will not let a broken system decide who owes whom a life anymore. Ethan lowered the bracelet. Then what do we do? For the first time in 10 years of fictional worlds, no glowing instruction appeared. No countdown. No mission. No role. Just the question. I breathed. We go home, I said. Not together. Not like before. You go home. I go to a hotel. Tomorrow, we talk with lawyers about separating our work, our money, and our living arrangements. Then, maybe, if we both still want to, we talk like people who can say no. Ethan looked as if I had asked him to cut out his own heart. You are leaving me. I am leaving the cage we built. And if I cannot sleep, call your therapist. Natalie coughed into her hand. Ethan shot her a look. She smiled innocently. I can recommend one, I added. His mouth twitched despite himself. It was small. Almost nothing. But it was the first honest expression I had seen from him all day. We did go home separately. Ethan hated it. I hated it too. That was how I knew it was necessary. The next month was not romantic in the way stories like to be romantic. There were no dramatic midnight kisses. No grand confession in the rain that magically healed years of damage. There were lawyers. Separate apartments. Therapy appointments. Awkward dinners with Margaret, who cried when I moved out but still packed me enough food for a family of 6. There were also apologies. Real ones. Mine came first, because mine had been overdue the longest. Ethan's came slowly. He apologized for weaponizing silence. For letting resentment rot instead of naming it. For using coldness as punishment. For calling me shameless when what he meant was that he was scared. For demanding that I read his pain while refusing to say it aloud. I apologized for not accepting his no. Every time I said it, something in the room changed. Not forgiveness exactly. Space. Space for both of us to exist without performing. Natalie visited often, usually by appearing in physically impossible places with coffee and illegal system files. She had inherited the system's access after killing it, which made her half heroine, half hacker, and entirely terrifying. I found 3 more worlds with villainous loops, she told me one afternoon, sitting cross-legged on my kitchen counter despite having been told not to. Want to help me break them? Remotely, I said. Boring. Alive. Fine. So that became my new work. By day, I ran a foundation for students with no family safety net. By night, I helped Natalie identify broken story loops and extract people who had been forced to suffer for plot structure. It turned out systems were very bad at handling women who compared notes. Ethan found out because he hacked my calendar. I should have been angry. I was angry. Then he showed up at my office with a cybersecurity team, a printed risk assessment, and the expression of a man trying extremely hard not to say, "Please let me help before you get yourself killed." "You are not allowed to control this," I told him. "I know. You are not allowed to monitor me without consent." "I know. You are not allowed to turn concern into surveillance." He put the folder on my desk and stepped back. "Then read the proposal and tell me which parts you consent to." I stared at him. The comments, which appeared less frequently now, flickered once over his shoulder. Character development. Maybe. I took the folder. I consent to the firewall. Only the firewall. And encrypted backups. Physical security. One driver. Chosen by Natalie. He grimaced. She hates me. She has taste. Ava. Fine. She distrusts you with excellent historical support. He sighed, but his eyes were warm. That warmth was dangerous. Not because it trapped me. Because this time, it did not. 3 months after the warehouse, Ethan invited me to dinner. Not commanded. Invited. The text read, "If you are free Friday, I would like to take you to dinner. If not, another time is fine." I stared at that message for 10 minutes. Then I sent it to Natalie. She replied, "Bare minimum grammar. Still suspicious." Margaret replied, "Wear the green dress." I wore the green dress. Ethan stood when I arrived at the restaurant. He wore a dark suit, no tie, and the expression of a man trying not to look like he had spent an hour deciding where to put his hands. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you. I'm not saying that because I expect anything. I know. I can stop talking." "Please do." He did. Dinner was quiet at first. Then easier. We talked about work, Margaret's health, Natalie's latest system crime, Noah's first semester at Columbia, and the fact that Ethan had started volunteering at a trauma center for children removed from dangerous homes. "You hate children," I said, surprised. "I never hated children. You once said they were loud, sticky liabilities." That was before a 12-year-old beat me at chess and called me emotionally constipated. Smart kid. Unfortunately. I laughed. Ethan looked at me the way he had looked in the old days when he thought I would not notice. Hungry, guarded, terrified of wanting too much. "This time," he said, "may I hold your hand?" 5 years ago, I would have teased him for asking. Now I understood what a gift the question was. "Yes," I said. He took my hand across the table. No script moved us. No comments cheered. No system marked progress. Just his fingers, warm and careful around mine. The plot tried one last time at the annual Veil Foundation Gala. It arrived in the form of a leaked article accusing me of manipulating Ethan with a false rescue story, stealing company influence, and driving away the true heroine Natalie Shaw. The old comments reappeared in a storm. Villainess exposed. Final punishment arc. Here we go. I stood backstage in a black satin dress, watching my name trend on every screen in the building. For a moment, the old fear returned. This was familiar. The public reveal. The humiliation. The room full of people waiting for a woman to be proven unworthy so they could enjoy her fall. Then Natalie walked in wearing combat boots under a silver gown. I found the source, she said. System remnant. It hijacked a gossip site. Margaret rolled in behind her in a wheelchair she did not need but enjoyed using for dramatic entrances. Can we sue it? It is code, Natalie said. I have sued less substantial men. Ethan entered last. He looked at the screens. Then at me. Your choice, he said. Not I will fix this. Not stay here. Not do as I say. Your choice. I loved him a little painfully in that moment. So I chose. I walked on stage. The room quieted as if someone had cut the sound. I took the microphone. Good evening, I said. Since my personal history is already being discussed without my consent, let us discuss it accurately. There were gasps. Ethan stood at the edge of the stage, still as a shadow. Natalie gave me a thumbs up. I told the truth. Not all of it. I did not mention systems or novel worlds. But I told enough. That I had come into the Vale family's life through trauma and confusion. That I had made harmful choices. That I had mistaken debt for love and proximity for consent. That Ethan and I had spent the past months untangling our lives with legal, emotional, and professional clarity. Then I invited Natalie on stage. She took the microphone and smiled like an angel with a knife collection. For the record, she said, I am not Ethan Vale's true love, secret girlfriend, rescued destiny, or whatever nonsense the gossip blogs invented. I am Ava Morgan's friend. I am also the woman who provided evidence that tonight's leak came from a coordinated digital attack. Behind us, the screen changed. Natalie's files appeared one by one. Payment trails. Fake accounts. Automated scripts. A system remnant disguised as a media botnet. The audience murmured. Ethan stepped up beside us. He did not take my microphone. He took the second one. Vale Group will cooperate with federal cybercrime investigators, he said. The Foundation's work continues. Ava Morgan remains its director because she built it, not because of my approval. He paused. Then he looked at me. And on a personal note, any story that describes Ava as a villain because she refused to disappear is a story written by someone afraid of women who survive. The comments froze. Then they shattered like glass. For the first time since they appeared, the air above us was clear. No audience of strangers. No verdict. No script. Only applause, rising slowly, then all at once. After the gala, Ethan found me on the terrace. The city glittered below us. Wind lifted the edge of my dress. Inside, Margaret was probably bullying senators for donations, and Natalie was definitely committing at least one cybercrime in the name of justice. Ethan stood beside me, leaving careful space. Are you all right? He asked. I think so. No comments. No comments. Good. I looked at him. You defended me. You defended yourself. I added footnotes. I laughed. His mouth softened. Ava, he said, I love you. The words did not crash into me like a claim. They settled between us like something offered. You do not have to answer now, he added quickly. Or ever. I just wanted to say it without turning it into a debt. That was the man I had wanted before I knew how to want safely. Not cold. Not untouchable. Not a prize for surviving pain. A person. Flawed. Frightened. Trying. I reached for his hand. He let me. I love you too, I said. But I'm keeping my apartment. His laugh broke on a breath. Good. And my foundation. Obviously. And Natalie gets veto power over any suspicious behavior. She already assumed that. And if you ever hack my calendar again, I will make Margaret sue you. Terrifying. She has sued less substantial men. He smiled then, real and unguarded. 6 months later, we started over. Not with a wedding. Not with a merger of homes, money, and wounds. We started with Sunday breakfast. With separate keys. With therapy homework on the refrigerator. With Ethan asking before he stepped into my space and me answering honestly instead of performing a role. Some days were awkward. Some days were tender. Some days we fought like two people who had learned conflict late and badly. But we fought with doors unlocked. That mattered. Natalie kept traveling between broken stories. Sometimes she returned with girls who had been villainesses, sisters, maids, extras, background tragedies. We built a real rescue network, disguised as scholarships, shelters, legal aid, and mental health funding. The world thought we were philanthropists. That was fine. The truth was stranger. Margaret lived long enough to see the first dormitory open under her name. She sat in the front row with her cane across her knees and threatened to haunt anyone who misused the budget. Ethan cried during the ribbon cutting. Quietly. Like a tea kettle with better public relations. I held his hand. He did not pull away. Years ago, I thought love meant being chosen by the plot. Then I thought survival meant escaping it. Now I know better. Love is not a debt. It is not a cage. It is not proof that pain was worth it. Love is a door both people can open. And if the story says you are the villainess for refusing to die, then maybe the story was never worth obeying. My name is Ava Morgan. I was a system worker, a failed villainess, a woman who hurt someone and chose to change, a girl who wanted a home so badly she mistook possession for belonging. I did not get the ending the comments predicted. I did not get the easy redemption either. I got something harder. I got a life I had to build honestly. The first week after I moved out, I learned how loud freedom could be. My new apartment was only 12 blocks from the foundation office, a sunlit 2-bedroom above a bakery that filled the hallway with cinnamon every morning. It had uneven floors, a radiator that clanked like a ghost with a hammer, and windows that did not look out over manicured lawns or private guards or Ethan's black cars idling beside the gate. I loved it so much I cried while unpacking towels. Then I cried again because I did not know where to put my shoes. That was the humiliating part about escaping a role. Once the dramatic music stopped, you still had to figure out groceries, laundry, insurance forms, and how to sleep in a room no one could enter unless you gave them a key. For several nights, I did not sleep well. Not because I missed the mansion, exactly. I missed noise. Ethan's footsteps outside my study. Margaret calling for tea. Staff moving down the hallway. The faint chime of the elevator. The old version of me would have called that home. The new version of me had to admit that some of it had been surveillance with good furniture. So I built routines. Monday mornings were for therapy. Tuesday nights were for self-defense classes with Natalie, who insisted that every woman should know at least 3 ways to break a man's wrist and 1 way to delete his offshore accounts. Wednesday was dinner with Margaret. Thursday was foundation paperwork. Friday was whatever I wanted it to be, which sounded liberating until I realized I had never practiced wanting small things. Wanting love, wanting safety, wanting a home, those were large, desperate hungers. Wanting a movie, a walk, a new mug, a lazy evening without earning it, those felt suspicious. My therapist called it rebuilding agency. Natalie called it learning to be a person instead of a plot device. Margaret called it finally having sense. Ethan called it nothing, because for the first month he was very careful not to call unless I called first. That did not mean he disappeared. He sent documents through lawyers. Clean documents. Fair documents. No hidden traps, no controlling clauses disguised as concern. He transferred foundation assets without delay. He resigned from several committees where his presence might make donors assume he still controlled me. He moved my personal investments into accounts only I could authorize. Every action said the same thing. I am learning. I hated how much that moved me. Growth is inconvenient when you are trying to maintain a clean emotional distance. One Friday, I found a small box outside my office door. No flowers. No jewelry. No dramatic luxury gift. Just a stack of photocopied children's books, all old library editions with cracked plastic covers. Inside was a note in Ethan's handwriting. I found the titles Grandma said I asked for after the kidnapping. I remembered the songs wrong. These are closer. No demand. No invitation. No call me. Just memory placed gently at my door. I sat on the floor and opened the first book. It was about a little girl who got lost in a snowstorm and sang to keep herself from being afraid. Halfway through the second page, I remembered a tune. Not all of it. Only 3 notes. But they were mine, or they had belonged to the girl I was before systems and scripts and death taught me to be useful by being disposable. I recorded myself humming the tune and sent it to Ethan. His reply came 4 minutes later. I remember that. Then, a second message. Thank you for sending it. I will not ask for more. That almost hurt worse than if he had begged. Because I knew he wanted to. 2 days later, Natalie broke into my apartment by using the fire escape, which I told her was illegal. So was your kidnapping, she said, climbing through the window with a paper bag of pastries. We all have hobbies. Your hobby needs boundaries. I brought almond croissants. You may stay for 15 minutes. She stayed for 4 hours. Natalie had a way of making herself look harmless until she started talking about system architecture. Then her face changed. The softness remained, but something cold and brilliant moved underneath it. She explained that systems did not write stories from nothing. They harvested desire, reader expectations, genre habits, cultural hunger. They took every belief people repeated often enough and turned it into law. Cold men must be warmed by suffering women. Sweet heroines must be rewarded. Villainesses must be punished. Debt can become love. Trauma can excuse possession. If enough stories repeated a lie, a system could build a cage out of it. So how do we break cages? I asked. Natalie licked powdered sugar from her thumb. Contradiction. That sounds too simple. It is simple. Not easy. She opened her laptop. On the screen were files from other story worlds. A stepsister forced to bully the heroine or lose her voice. A secretary required to cover for her boss's affair or die in a car crash. A mother written as cruel because she refused to forgive an ungrateful family. A female general doomed because readers preferred her softer replacement. The system can handle rebellion, Natalie said. It expects screaming, revenge, jealousy, dramatic sacrifice. What damages it is sustained refusal. A villainess apologizing properly. A hero accepting no. A heroine choosing another woman over the romance route. A family believing the accused person before the evidence arc is scheduled. Boring ethical behavior is system poison. I stared at her. So the answer is emotional maturity. Basically. That is terrible television. Great survival strategy. We started there. Not by jumping into worlds with swords drawn, though Natalie would have enjoyed that. We began by sending messages through cracks in the comment system. Tiny warnings. Questions. Alternatives. What if you asked the child what he needed? What if you did not attend the engagement banquet? What if you kept proof before confronting him? What if you apologized and left? At first, only a few characters heard us. Then more. The comments around my life changed too. They no longer came as constant judgment. Sometimes they flickered when a choice mattered. One appeared above my sink while I was washing a coffee mug. She is not chasing him. Is this still romance? Another answered. Maybe romance starts when the chasing stops. I stood there with soap on my hands and felt something inside me loosen. Meanwhile, Ethan attended therapy with the discipline of a man preparing for a hostile acquisition. His therapist gave him worksheets. He completed them like quarterly reports. His first attempt at identifying feelings contained bullet points, risk categories, and a mitigation plan. When he showed it to me over coffee, I stared until he looked defensive. What? You made a spreadsheet for sadness. It was efficient. Was it? No, he admitted. My therapist said the same thing. I laughed so hard the woman at the next table smiled. Ethan watched me, and for once his face did not close around the tenderness. He let it show. That small openness felt more intimate than any forced closeness we had ever had. What did you write under fear? I asked. He looked down at his cup. You. My smile faded. Not because I am afraid of you, he said quickly. Because losing you is the shape fear takes in my body. That is not your responsibility. I am trying to understand the difference. I nodded, throat tight. What did you write under anger? Also you. Efficient. His mouth curved. And myself. And my mother. And the men who locked me in that closet. And every adult who told me being quiet meant being strong. That one stayed with me. Because I had done the opposite. I had survived by becoming loud enough that no one could forget I was in the room. He had survived by becoming silent enough that no one could reach him. No wonder we had hurt each other. We were two alarms going off in different languages. Spring came. The foundation expanded into legal aid, then emergency housing. Noah became our first student ambassador, which made Ethan intensely suspicious until Noah spent 10 minutes explaining his research on affordable housing policy, and Ethan realized the boy was more interested in urban planning than in stealing anyone's girlfriend. Natalie still teased him anyway. Careful, she told Ethan at a donor brunch. Young, kind, emotionally available. Very dangerous. Ethan looked at Noah, then at me. Do you find zoning reform attractive? I nearly choked on my orange juice. Noah, poor child, turned bright red. I patted Ethan's hand. Only when paired with strong public transit policy. I can learn. Natalie groaned. This is the worst flirting I have ever witnessed. Margaret leaned over. Then you have not seen my late husband try to court me with tax advice. The table erupted. For a second, we looked like a family. Then the word family stopped frightening me. It did not mean ownership. It did not mean debt. It meant people laughing over breakfast while trying, badly and sincerely, to be less broken than yesterday. The system remnant hated that. We knew because the attacks became more direct. A student file disappeared. A donor received fake emails. Someone sent tabloids an edited video of me arguing with Ethan outside the foundation, cutting out the part where we calmly agreed to reschedule a meeting and making it look like a public breakdown. Old me would have panicked. New me made a folder labeled "Nice Try." Natalie traced the attacks. Ethan hardened our infrastructure. I called every student affected before gossip could reach them. Margaret called 3 senators, 2 judges, and 1 retired journalist who apparently owed her a favor from 1987 and sounded terrified to be reminded. For the first time, crisis did not isolate me. It gathered us. The night before the gala, I found Ethan outside my apartment building. He was not in the lobby. Not at my door. Not somewhere that made me feel cornered. He stood across the street under a maple tree, holding a paper bag from the bakery downstairs. I crossed to him. This looks suspiciously like waiting. It is offering, he said. Offering what? Cinnamon rolls. And company, if wanted. And if not? Then cinnamon rolls remain. I took the bag. Company is acceptable for 1 walk. We walked along the river. The city was damp and silver around us. For a while, we said nothing. Silence used to be a weapon between us. Now it was just weather. Ethan finally said, "When you leave after the gala tomorrow, will you tell me before you go?" I am not planning to vanish. I know. Do you? He was quiet. I'm trying to. That answer mattered more than certainty. I bumped his shoulder lightly with mine. I will tell you. His breath left him slowly. Thank you. The next day, when the leak happened and the old plot tried to turn me into a spectacle again, I was scared. But I was not alone. That was the part the system never understood. Villainous endings require isolation. They require everyone to believe the worst at the same time. They require the accused woman to stand in the center of the room with no witness except the audience that came to watch her fall. I had witnesses now. Not because I was innocent of everything. Because I had told the truth before the punishment scene arrived. That was why the comments shattered. Not because Ethan defended me. Not because Natalie exposed the attack. Not because Margaret threatened lawsuits with the glee of a retired dragon in pearls. They shattered because the story had no secret left to reveal. I had already revealed myself. After Ethan told me he loved me on the terrace, I did not answer quickly because love deserved better than reflex. I thought about every version of myself that had chased love like oxygen. The orphan girl. The system worker. The villainess. The assistant who laughed too loudly and touched too freely because stillness felt like abandonment. Then I thought about the woman standing there now, with her own apartment, her own work, her own friends, and a man waiting without reaching. That woman could say yes. So I did. But saying yes did not end the work. It began a different kind. There were still days Ethan flinched when I cancelled plans. There were still days I felt rejected when he needed space. The difference was that we said the quiet parts out loud before they became knives. Once, 2 years later, I found him sitting in my kitchen at midnight, staring at his phone. What happened? I asked. My mother emailed. I knew very little about his mother except that she had left after the kidnapping and sent money instead of apologies. Ethan had once told me that as a child he waited by the window for 3 birthdays before understanding she was not coming. Do you want me to sit with you? He nodded. So I Saturday. He did not ask me to fix it. I did not try. We read the email together. It was polished, regretful, and somehow still selfish. Ethan cried silently for the boy who had wanted that email 20 years too early. I held his hand. The next morning, he wrote back 3 sentences. I received your message. I am not ready for contact. Please respect that. Then he blocked the address. Look at you, I said, sliding coffee across the table. Boundaries. He looked exhausted. Horrible experience. Very proud of you. He leaned his forehead against my shoulder. That part helps. Our love never became simple. But it became kind. And after everything, kind felt like a miracle larger than fate. And this time, no system gets to take credit for it.